So what happens with this creature AI when it takes over our world? What's going to be left for humans to do? Work doesn't just provide a paycheck. It provides meaning. It provides purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You know, a career is more than just, as Studs Terkel say, we need a purpose and not a paycheck. Or is there a Star Trek future where all of the horrible stuff that we hate doing day in and day out, all the drudgery at work, the emails and the pointless Slack threads and all of the make work that gets thrown our way, if all that's removed from us and we have a future where we can explore our inner selves, our outer selves in the world, exploration, hiking, science, art, architecture, whatever your thing is that the world we're moving into, or are we moving into a dystopian world where there won't be enough work to go around because artificial intelligence agents, not quite yet, but very soon are going to be better at doing lots of the things that people get paid money to do. So those are the questions I'm going to invite you to think about. I want to talk a little bit about the history of humankind and what makes us special, because my assertion is that one of my most quoted lines is, the more technological our society becomes, the more precious and valuable becomes the human. And what do I mean by that? Like, what are human superpowers? I'm going to talk about two of them, right? One of them is obviously the big brain. But I'm also going to first talk about something that we've been hearing throughout is caring, collaboration, kindness, and gratitude, and some of the themes I've been hearing from other speakers. So Margaret Mead was a very famous cultural anthropologist, and she was asked, she virtually invented cultural anthropology in the 1940s and 1950s, and Margaret Mead was asked, when did civilization begin? Like, what was the thing that you discovered where you said, aha, that's civilized? And she said that she discovered a skeleton that one of the bones has been broken, but she was able to tell that the bone had broken, but that the person had lived to a very old age. And she said, normally, she said that wouldn't be the case in the animal kingdom. If an antelope breaks a leg on the savannah, you know, the other antelopes would be like, all right, bud, hope it works out, you know. But human beings began to care for one another. And that's one of the things, is caring about other people beyond our kinship group. We all care for our children, right? But it's caring about the other, whether that other be our next door neighbor or a person on the other side of the planet. That's one of what became the defining capabilities of human beings. I always give this as a thought experiment. If you imagine the savannah 100,000 years ago, and you see zebras and lions and cheetahs and all these dangerous animals, and rhinoceri and hippopotami and, you know, all these creatures. We don't have scales or fangs. We can't run very quickly. You know, we don't have any other protections. We don't have protection from the elements, mostly. So how did we survive? If you'd been an alien playing like some kind of DraftKings bet above, and they said, well, who are you going to bet on? Well, my money's on the lion. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you bet on us? But something we did was very special, is we learned to collaborate. We learned to care. We learned to talk. And those bands of 7 to 15 to 20 hunter-gatherers became bigger and bigger and bigger, so we learned to collaborate better. Now, there's a silly notion in society today, there's another anthropologist, talks about a dominator hierarchy. If you look at other animal species, there's often the alpha male gorilla, or the lion that's head of the pride. And what do they do with other males? They kick their butts, right? Because that's the way that social relationships are sometimes established in primitive things. Now, it's impossible in today's evolved 21st century society that any of our leaders would behave like that. But those dominator hierarchies where power goes to the person with the most force, the person that's willing to bully, that's not, I don't think, what defines the human species and why we've been able to flourish when, if you look at the world, a lion from 100,000 years ago is living in the same conditions as they were living today and 100,000 years ago. Sharks are going to shark. Sharks are older than us. They look just like they always looked, and they live like they always lived. But what have we done during that time? And that's the incredible human journey. And that's what makes humankind such, you know, to my mind, such a precious and awe-inspiring species. So what did we do? Is we began to invent tools, and these tools in turn changed us. So fire meant we could release more calories from food, means we could prepare skins for clothing. It means we would gather around a hearth and form social connections, which strengthened the tribal bonds. It enabled the forging of tools, so it began to change our society and us, as well as enabling us to do more things. And throughout human history, DNA today, for example, is taught to every 9th or 10th grader in biology class. We've only known about that for 100 years. Like 100 years ago, they thought DNA was like scaffolding. They didn't know that it was the genetic material. We didn't know what it looked like until the 50s, and we didn't really know how it worked until the 70s and 80s. But now we teach that stuff to 9th graders. That, to me, is quite incredible, that something that merits a Nobel Prize in 1 decade, 2 decades later, is the sort of thing you're teaching in high school and junior high school. And so that's the miracle of human thinking. But there are also other things we do that animals don't really do all that well. We think that we're the only species that can imagine. When an animal looks up at the stars, they see points of light. But we began to tell ourselves stories about Virgos and Libras and Orion the Hunters and these dramatic celestial conflicts. And even though we have a different explanation for all of that right now, that imagination, that faculty, now allows us to imagine different worlds. It allows us to say, what if? It allows us to say, could we possibly do this? What would the world be like? And that's a rare faculty. And then this big cortex thing that sits on front of our heads allows us to plan and execute and strategize. And we think that's a distinctly human faculty. So when I talk about what's distinctly human, I'm thinking about care and collaboration and creativity and caring about beyond your kinship bonds, but I'm also talking about the things that we think we can do cognitively. And so the idea for me is that's the stuff that makes us distinctly human, and that's the stuff, I don't want to lose in a world of artificial intelligence. And, I think we'd all agree, like, it might be nice to see some more of that kind of stuff rather than less. Real. But let's ask you guys, are you a doomer or an accelerationist? Think about this question, what you do with AI. How often do you use it during the day? Don't think. Just give yourself, if you choose the top one, like I use it almost constantly every day for everything, or the bottom one, give yourself a 1 for the top and a 0 for the bottom, and if you're somewhere in between, then give yourself some sort of fraction. If you want to see what stats look like around the world, those are the share of people who are using their own version. They call it BYOLM, bring your own language model to work. All right, you got your answer to that? You jotted it down, the first one? You're a 1 or a 0 or somewhere in between? This utopian future of work, there's a great line. There's very hard to find purely utopian sci-fi. Like you've all seen The Matrix and The Terminator and some of the more contemporary things, right? There's a lot of that out there. I could only think of this, and this is a famous line from good old Captain. The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. People are no longer obsessed with the accumulation of things. We've eliminated hunger and want, the need for possessions, the challenges to improve yourself, to enrich yourself. And I used to have a friend of mine made fun of that as if, that's just a stupid thing to say. Like it doesn't even have value as an aspiration. I don't know, it doesn't sound like such a stupid aspiration to me, but anyway. There are people who think it should go faster, and there are people who think we need more brakes. There are people who think it's the most powerful thing ever invented, and there are people who think it's just another technology. I'm very near the top in terms of, I think, the power and potential of it. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, I think there's ways in which we need to slow down. There are regions. The European Union has very strong AI regulations to protect your privacy, to protect from deepfake, to protect it from manipulation, because it is very, very good at manipulating you. We don't have any AI legislation in the United States, certainly nothing at the national level. In fact, the opposite is happening. But my sort of neologism, the thing I coined is people first accelerationist, and that's why I called my book Adopting AI, the people first approach, is because we need to remember, I think, as a world, that when we unleash these super powerful things, that we do them for the benefit of each other and for the benefit of humanity. And OpenAI, it's a remarkable company, and God knows I use it in an inordinate amount. But it was founded on a vision of making the world a better place for humanity and helping humanity flourish and prosper. And now it's become for profit. And Notosaurus, like their most recent releases one was Sora 2, is like make short form video. Like we need more short term video. Is that going to make a difference to humanity? I don't think so, right? More TikTok? I don't know. And then the other thing is Sam Altman said we were going to put erotica on that. I said, well, you doing, dude, you got a partnership with Pornhub? Is that your vision for humanity? Like they're trying to commercialize this stuff now in a way, and that's not people first. I want it to serve you and others like you, but also, there are global problems. We can point this out. The world has progressed. There are fewer people starving. There are fewer kids starving. Fewer kids, but there are global problems that if we could turn this super intelligence on, begin to use its resources to try and make the world really a better place and not make a few people a little better off. Because the world in which the dystopian world is, a lot of people get very rich and the rest of us are out of work. As Jeffrey Hinton said in one interview, he said, Musk is going to make fat stacks and the rest of us are going to be broke AF. And that's the dystopian vision I worry about. I worry about human beings working for AI. So already people use AI as project manager to help coordinate the activities of your team. There's not such a huge stake between them having some authority, some performance management authority, some ability to review your performance. We're not like so many years away from worlds like that. So these are things that I worry about. It is, by the way, if you want to know some statistics, it's the biggest build out in human history. So on the left is the interstate highways, which is about 25 billion a year. The internet build out was about 35 billion a year. The moon landing about 25 billion a year. 2 trillion. In 2025, and probably that much again in 2026. That slide's 4 weeks old. It's from a presentation I gave on AI and the global economy. And it's probably, I would have to guess, another 200 billion bigger than that, just from what's happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Just kind of nuts, right? So, I mean, this is the dystopian future, is basically, a bunch of people watching the world burn is saying we need to monetize this stuff as quickly as possible, and that's what we want to avoid. And my vision is more like, I don't know if this is a vision, but like it or hate it. And there are a lot of people I know who I admire who either hate it or just think it's principally stupid. It's like an autocorrect. It's here to stay. That kind of $2 trillion spending isn't going away. And your future as a worker is going to depend on how you can integrate that in your life to increase your productivity. And by the way, the research shows it increases work satisfaction a lot. So it's not about just making more money for the man, but there is research that shows that people who are using it to take away some of the drudgery, to use it as a thinking partner or a strategizing partner, are actually more satisfied at work. We also have to master it as a citizen, because our responsibility is to fight for it being used for purposes that are aligned with human values. We cannot rely on a very few people in a certain part of this country to make decisions on behalf of the other 8.5 billion of us. I'm speaking about humanity, not just the United States. But that's the model in which we live right now. So my research and writing, I used to be a technologist and math guy when I was super young, but now I'm on the human side of technology, I'm on the human side of organizations, and my research is, where does this stuff touch? Art, education, science, workplaces. That's my kind of place that I am. So I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the stuff that I work. So let's talk a little bit about the future of work. Unlike other technology, because you've all been in the workplace a little while, right? You've had new technologies come and go all the time, right? Do we worry about them in the same way about it taking our jobs? Not at all, but with AI, we do. And of course, AI has a bad rep from science fiction. So unlike other technologies, there's a fear factor. Because I don't know anybody who said, oh, there's a new release of Excel coming from Microsoft, I'm really frightened about it, right? Or there's a new SAP coming, right? It doesn't happen. So it's unlike other technology, and it's also more complicated than anything I've ever trained my mind on. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So between fear and uncertainty, it's unlike it. It's hard. There, on the other hand, it's very hard to find utopian views of work. And I think that's a loss for humanity because we have all these dystopian visions of what the world could look like. We need some that says, what kind of workplace would be amazing to work in 2035, where I would really find joy in going there. I'd go if they didn't have to pay me, maybe not that far. But this is the sort of vision I think that's lacking, is what an AI-enabled workplace could look like that's empowering and inspiring and supports human joy and flourishing. And there's just no visions of that around, except for, as I said, Star Trek. So the future of work 2030, hybrid work is going to grow rather than shrink. AI is going to restructure organizations, whether we like it or not. The same work's going to take half as many people, maybe fewer than that, unfortunately. Upskilling, now the average skill life of a computer programmer is like 2.2 years or 1.8 years or something like that. These things are going to get shorter. Culture and trust, which is quite an interesting thing because for so much of my career, I've been helping businesses like shove technology down the throat of the company, if you will, right? We're going to put in the system, and then what they do is they cut a big check for it, whatever. The money that they cut for like SAP is like $20, $50, $100 million, right? And then they're like, we're going to persuade people to use it, and we're going to persuade people that it's a good thing for them, we're going to persuade them it's not going to take their jobs, and we're going to give them the skill, and that's the kind of model. But with AI, the technology is already strong enough to do most of what you want to do in the workplace with it. If it stopped evolving right now, it would still take 10 years for workplaces to catch up with what it's able to do. The bottlenecks are trust, management routines, rituals, leadership behavior, culture, mindset, skills. When it hits the human side of an organization, well, the CIO can't just shove it upon humans because, you know what, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past, it's not going to work now. The head of Accenture, a woman called Julie Sweet, the CEO, said, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase her. She said, anybody who can't be upskilled for AI is going to be out. There are people saying that. There are also people saying, when they want headcount, there are people who say, you have to prove to CFO or CEO, whoever it is, that it can't be done by an AI. So right now, it hasn't destroyed any jobs. That may have changed in the last 2 weeks. Amazon just fired 14,000 people. They're going to replace them with a robot. Amazon has 1 million robots working for it. You believe that? You ever seen the movie I, Robot, where they're all standing there like that? Amazon has 1 million of those guys. It's quite crazy. But let's talk about 3 types of AI adoption. And this is the part where I'm going to make it super practical and relevant for you. Now, you'll be at different places of your AI journey, right? Some of you don't use it much at all. Some of you are using it day in, day out. Some are using it in enterprises at work. Some are using it at home. Some are using it at home where you're not using it at work. But I'm going to give you an idea about how to upskill yourself very practically, very quickly, weeks and months rather than years and years, into becoming an AI power user. That's personal productivity. I'm not going to talk at all about the AI that gets shoved inside SAP or Salesforce or whatever like that. It's just not very interesting. It's also not that complicated or difficult an issue. Well, it is for IT, but it's not for anybody else. And then the most complicated part is agentic AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's a book-length treatment by itself. But supporting all of those are governance, risk, literacy, capability, cultural leadership. So I'm going to spend a bit more time at the end talking about those 3 things. So let's get on to, I just want to dispose of agentic AI. I'll be honest with you, I had like 17 slides on this last night. And my buddy's like, oh no, man, just don't do that. Anyway, agentic AI. So traditional AI, you say, I don't know, give me a recipe for chicken parmesan. And it goes, okay, here, Bo, here's a recipe for chicken parmesan. By the way, you can tell it what to call you. I like it to call me either King or Papi. So anyway, it goes, here's your recipe. But if you want to prepare the meal, you need an agent, right? Because for it to be useful to you in your personal life, or your enterprise life, or your life as a parent, or whatever you are in your life, whatever role you fulfill in your life, it has to have some ability to do stuff, right? Like nobody ever lost weight because somebody told them how to lose weight, right? You want it to be able to do things for you. As someone quite famously says, I want AI to do the dishes and the laundry so I can write, and not AI to do my writing so I can do the dishes and laundry, right? We want it to be able to do stuff that makes our lives better. So that's the difference between agentic AI and regular old LLM, ChatGPT AI. One of the mistakes organizations make is this. Now, this is so pervasive. So when it first disappeared, they're like, we're going to slot like a sort of AI into a team, a marketing team or an HR team of 5 people, and we're going to like replace one of them with an agent. Except that's kind of dumb, right? If you think about it. Like this thing is maybe not quite as smart as a human being left, but it's differently capable than a human being. Like we can do things it can't. It's a lot smarter than us. It's got PhDs in 100 subjects. You know, it's a pretty clever thing. Workplaces aren't designed with big gaping holes for this kind of intelligence. So what do? You give Einstein a shovel. The equivalent of asking him to fold laundry, right? We're not making optimal use of it. And neither is it very good for the people on the team because the poor person who's left the team no longer has a job because Einstein's folding the laundry. So one of the interesting shows, anyone seen The Bear? Like the best show of 2025. It's like so amazing. If you want to run a restaurant, you go into that business to become a chef because you love cooking. You love the art and the craft of cooking. A lot of people go into HR, I'm told, because they love people. They love doing something for the human side of organization. That's part of their mission. That's why they're in HR, not in finance or legal or one of those other rubbishy functions down there. But what happens when you go into HR with your love of people and wanting to make their lives at work better and empower them and, to train them, upskill, all the good stuff that HR, you end up doing a lot of drudgery, less now than 20 years ago. But isn't that true for HR folks? Is that a lot of your time, I don't want to say 80%, is spent doing things that you'd rather not be doing, right? But the stuff that really drew you to it, my dad was a professor. He went into professoring because he loved science. But by the time you become a senior scientist, 55 years old, all you're doing is filling out paperwork and grants and administration and budgets and all that kind of stuff. So if you're running a restaurant like The Bear and you're the highest rated Michelin chef in the country or whatever that award he was run, you don't want to spend your time like the poor guy on the right is paying bills and doing logistics and automated purchasing, tracking inventory, staff scheduling, reservation scheduling, cash flow management, re-engineering the menu, compliance and maintenance on them. You don't want to do that. You love cooking. And so the utopian vision for AI, and by the way, this isn't utopian like 2050, this is like utopian like 2026, 2027, is that all of that garbed drudgery that makes our man from The Bear's life horrible is done by a computer. It's done by a sequence of agents talking to one another and handing off work to one another. And this is already happening in the creator economy. God, there are so many videos on Instagram about here's how I built a business, and all the guts of the business is run by artificial intelligence, and I'm free to do what I like to do, is create content or be an influencer or whatever these people do. I don't know. They add value to somebody, I assume, just not me. But there are now businesses that have one human at the helm and a bunch of AI agents doing all the BS. Now that is, in some senses, quite a liberating thought, right? For those of you who may be inclined to start a business. Like, that'd be kind of cool. Because if you're like me, there's quite a lot of stuff you don't like doing. So, just a thought, just a provocation. I also believe that there will be an AI-only company, maybe 2026, certainly by 2027. It'll just be all these things. Now it'll have some human supervision, and the humans are going to have to inject the capital, and there'll be some human governance, I hope. Otherwise, it's Terminator. But the things we do in life that give us passion and joy and meaning, and there are things we do in life, all of us, that we prefer not to do. So if we can do more of those things with agentic AI, and that's the vision, and it's, as I said, this isn't sci-fi. This is like 2026.